Today we're going to look at Hosea chapter 1, which is the beginning of one of the most fascinating and at the same time challenging stories in the Hebrew Bible. If you Google Hosea, these are some of the images that you might come across. Now the pinky heart is grossly inappropriate in my view, but this image is not so bad, because the story of Hosea is really the story of a relationship which is destroyed and then hopefully rebuilt again. And so it's a story of marriage, love, betrayal, forgiveness, restoration, salvation, judgment. People usually divide the book of Hosea in three different sections. Chapters 1 to 3 form a discrete unit. And it is there that we find the story of Hosea's marriages. Now, the first question I want to ask is, what is the structure of this passage? It begins with a command addressed to Hosea: go and take for yourself a wife. And then the rest is centered around Hosea's three children. As you can see, the birth of each child is reported, but the important thing in each case is the name of the child. The final passage is completely different. It talks about the people of Israel, not the children of Hosea, and yet it is somehow linked to the preceding story, because at the end of the passage, again, the names of Hosea's three children appear, but with an entirely different meaning. So, to sum up, you have an introduction, you have three short paragraphs dealing with Hosea's three children, and then you have a concluding section which talks about salvation, but picks up on the theme of the names of Hosea's children. The ball starts rolling with the Lord's command to Hosea: go take for yourself a wife. Which in principle is a wonderful thing, and this is where you get the pink heart that people sometimes associate with the story of Hosea. But there is a problem. And the problem is that Hosea is told to go and get a wife of whoredom and have children of whoredom. And that means he's asked to start a relationship which is doomed to end in failure and pain. And this, of course, raises huge questions. First of all, what do these words mean? And secondly, how can the Lord ask such a thing? Now, there are different ways in which you can explain the phrase. First of all, it may refer to the fact that Gomer, Hosea's wife-to-be, participated in a Canaanite fertility cult, which involved some rituals of sexual nature. Secondly, it is possible that she was simply a woman of loose character, and her tendencies were well known in her community. But there is a third explanation which I like better. And this explanation is that initially, the command sounded something like, go and take for yourself a wife and have children. In other words, Hosea was simply called to marry a girl. It was only later, with the benefit of hindsight, that Hosea realized his wife was a wife of whoredom. And this was a deeper meaning in the call which he did not initially realize. And as part of that process, he also realized that the reason for this additional dimension to his call. The land has committed adultery against the Lord. The people of Israel have forsaken the Lord, and his marriage served as the symbol for that reality. And this is really the main point of the story. The first child born to Hosea is called Jezreel. And just like Isaiah's children later on, this child's name has a symbolic significance. Jezreel was the name of an important city in northern Israel, and it was also the name of one of the most important, both from a military and economic point of view, valleys in the north. So this is a picture of Jezreel Valley. You have the Sea of Galilee here, and this is the River Jordan flowing into the Dead Sea. And this is the Jezreel Valley with Megiddo, and then Jezreel on the other side of the valley. So as you can see, the city and the valley are in the same part of the same locality. And the valley is strategically important because if you travel from north to south, in other words from Assyria to Egypt, you are likely to want to use the pass of Megiddo. And therefore, if you are looking for a place to fight, a place for a military encounter, the Jezreel Valley is as good as any. Hosea explains the name of his child, saying, "In a little while I will punish the house of Jehu for the blood of Jezreel." There is a reference here to a specific event, and I'm not going to explain what it is. I invite you to go and read 2 Kings chapters 9 and 10, which explain the reference Hosea makes in these verses. So the name Jezreel refers to the sin, but it also refers to the punishment. So there is a sense of poetic justice here. Israel will be punished in the valley of Jezreel because of a sin that was committed in Jezreel. The names of Hosea's next two children also bear symbolic significance. The first one, Lo Ruhama, is translated as not pitied and refers to the attitude of the Lord. It is translated as pity, but it has also the connotation of compassion, the compassion which someone stronger feels towards someone who is weaker. And therefore this word is very appropriate for describing the feelings a parent might have towards their child. The Lord has been compassionate and willing to overlook Israel's weaknesses and mistake, but this has now come to an end. There is going to be no more compassion, and therefore the last name, the name of the last child, Lo Ami, proclaims the result of that end of compassion and pity. The people of Israel are no longer going to be Yahweh's people. The phrase is a direct reference to the covenant formula, I will be your God and you will be my people. And Hosea's children, with their symbolic names, now proclaim that this reality has come to an end. The final passage talks about the salvation of Israel. The transition is very abrupt. There is nothing to prepare the reader for this completely different new message of salvation. And for that reason, many people think these verses come from a different historical period, either from a later stage of Hosea's mission, or maybe even from an altogether later historical period. But whatever the explanation in historical terms, we still need to explain why did the redactor or whoever put the text together, why did they place these oracles of salvation after the message of judgment without any preparation or explanation. And this is something that I would like you to think about. The message itself has several different components. Salvation consists essentially, first of all, of numerical growth with a language which is reminiscent of the promises to the patriarchs in the book of Genesis. So the people of Israel will grow again to be a numerous nation. Secondly, there will be healing of division. The unity of the people of Israel will be restored when the northern and the southern kingdom will come back together. And thirdly, there will be new leadership. They will appoint for themselves one head. And it is interesting to note here that Hosea does not call that person a king. He simply calls him a head, which may reflect the criticism of the monarchy, which is quite prominent throughout the book of Hosea. The phrase, they shall take possession of the land, is difficult to understand because in Hebrew it literally means they shall go up from the land. And there may be here an allusion to Israel being like a plant which is planted on its land and then begins to grow. But the most important aspect on which everything is based is the transformation in the divine-human relationship. In verse 10, in the place where it was said to them, "You are not my people," it shall be said to them, "You are children of the living God." And the transformation in that relationship is also linked to a transformation in the people themselves. Before they were children of whoredom, and now they are children of the living God. The theme of transformation is captured at the end in the change of meaning of the names of Hosea's children. The day of Jezreel, which used to be a day of defeat, now becomes a day of triumph and victory. The not my people have become my people, and the not pitied has become pitied. There you go. This becomes as complex as it gets. Let's take now all these arrows. Pooh! So the first chapter of Hosea proclaims judgment and salvation, and serves as a fitting introduction to the book, which will explore these two themes in a lot more depth.